roast fans, and welcome to episode 3 of Roast Babble, a Roast Battle community podcast. We're not really affiliated officially with the Roast Battle League in any way, but we do love roasting. We support all roasting in all forms. It's pretty cool fucking art form, if you ask me. Today on the show, we have the one and only, this is long overdue, even though we're only 3 episodes in, Pat Barker, the commissioner of the entire Roast Battle League. Welcome to the show, Pat.
Thank you. I was insulted when you were like, yeah, I'm starting a thing. And guess who I have as my first 2 guests? I'm like, I'm assuming me twice. And then it was 2 other guys.
Well, I mean, Jay Light, I had to have him on. He's like director of programming, and everyone was sleeping on that. Nobody knew that. So he unpacked a lot for us behind the scenes, but I feel like you being the commissioner of the entire league can unpack it a little more clearly, a little more in depth for us.
Yeah, no, I'm messing with you. I mean, Jay has been invaluable since he came back to the Roast Battle family. Both behind the scenes, and now he's like, I want to battle every month. So he's all the way back, and it's great to have him. It's much better when he's a part of the show than when he's not.
Anyway, back to you. Sorry for going aside. I'm bad for that. Like,
all good.
So much to talk about. You've hosted multiple podcasts. You're the host of RBL Weekly, which is the Roast Battle League's official podcast, with Brian Moses, who I want to have on here too. I haven't reached out to him yet, but I'm getting there. If you see this, Brian, motherfucker. You are a community leader. I have to call you that first. You're the commissioner, like I said, of the RBL. You have the same name as an author in the UK, which made you an interesting person to research for this.
Yeah, tell me about it. That's a real bummer. People love the Ghost Road. So yeah, you Google Pat Barker, and I'm not the first person that comes up, and I'm okay with that. As long as I'm top 5, I'll be all right.
Yeah, your IMDb doesn't even have a picture on it, man.
So what happened with that is that's connected to Roast Battle in a way, which is very annoying. So what happened was when we created the bank account for RBL Entertainment or whatever, I attempted to buy some camera supplies. And what happened was it was like a brand new debit card that had just been activated, and it has an address in one state, and I was trying to have the stuff shipped to another state, and neither of the addresses are where I actually live. So Amazon suspended my account. I spent hours on the phone with Amazon trying to get the thing to go through. I ended up having to put it on my personal card. It was a whole thing. And then seemingly unrelated, IMDb Pro canceled my account, and I had no idea because I used to have the Pro. I could go in and edit all my shit. And so then I had to wait, I had to go through customer service with them, and they're like, oh yeah, it's connected to your Amazon account. So one of these days, the first day where I have 30 free minutes, I have to go in and reactivate because IMDb Pro sends me an email every day where they're like, come back, we'll give you a great deal. And I'm like, I want to, please let me, without connecting it to my Amazon. But it's a whole it's a thing. So anyway, that's PTSD.
Yeah, I can't see you having 30 free minutes. You wear a lot of hats, man.
Right. It's it's ridiculous. I just got back from I was up till 4 a.m. writing roast jokes about the Seattle Mariners. I'm writing for a comic who's roasting the Mariners in a few days. So my goal is to have over 100 Mariners roast jokes by tomorrow, probably about halfway there. So I was up till about 4. And then I woke up today at 8. My son got Student of the Month, which is great. So I had to get up early. We went to his assembly to watch him get his award, and then I came back and I'm doing this. And then right after this, I have to go. I'm co-writing a pilot episode of like a sketch show with another former Roast Battle great, and a couple NFL players, ex-NFL players in the mix. Hopefully it takes, but we have a big meeting today, so I have to go pitch a whole bunch of sketches for that. And then after that, back to work on the Mariners roast. So it's and in the middle of that, it's opening week of the Roast Battle League. So we recorded our first RBL Weekly yesterday. Yeah, it just kind of never ends. But better to be busy than not, I guess.
Oh, absolutely. You got to keep moving forward always. Uh, you are doing a lot of work with the NFL lately. Is that all since the Tom Brady roast, or were you working with them before that with corporate events and whatnot?
No, I mean I've always kind of I veered into it's a very niche space, but my cross street is the intersection of like sports and roasting, right? So it definitely has pigeonholed me into this area, and I think I could do a lot more. But by the same token, if there is a sports roast type of thing, I'm usually the first call, which is nice. But it sometimes it's working with the NFL directly. In this case, it's just a couple former NFL players who have they're going through like their own production company. But the thing that made people back in my like high school like where I grew up think that I was successful was an NFL thing. I did a show called NFL Top 10, and it's just one of these talking head shows that they have on every network where it's just like top 10 comebacks. And what happens is you film, like, it's just like they play footage of the things and then they cut to people being like, oh yeah, when they made that comeback, that was incredible, right? I'm one of those guys. So they brought in a couple of comedians, and I filmed 20 episodes in a single day.
Wow.
You film the entire season. You go into like some hotel suite, and I tried to memorize as many jokes as I could. I wrote about different things, and like I tried to get on as many episodes as I could, and I ended up on a lot of episodes. Well, shit like that, they play. NFL Network is just on in the background everywhere. It's at bowling alleys, it's at Chili's, it's wherever. So I had friends from back home taking pictures of like TVs, and they're like, dude, you're on TV at Applebee's right now. And they're like, you are famous. And what they don't know is my payment for doing 20 episodes of Top 10 was an NFL Network t-shirt. That's what I got.
Damn.
I don't know how, it's obviously non-union. But it was I kind of assumed there was money, and I was really like naive, and I was like, yeah, I'll come do it. Like, if nothing else, good for exposure and all that. But then, when I got there, I was like, what's the pay? And they're like, you can have one of these shirts. And the only size they had was medium, so I can't even wear it. It's it sucked. But everyone back home thinks that's like my biggest success. So.
Well, that's a cool in a way. I mean, sucks at the time, but very very impactful early lesson about contracts.
Yeah, big time, big time.
Can you tell us a little bit about Mayor McCheesesteak?
How the fuck did you find that?
I did a little digging. I like to research pretty deep
Man.
before I get on.
I thank God nobody I've ever battled has done that level of research on me. So, basically what happened was I wrote for a show at the end of 2022, I believe, into 2023 called The Pile On, and it was an NFL show on Prime Video, hosted by Taron Killam, SNL alum, and it was kind of a bizarre show. There was like some sketch in there. There was like a monologue up top. There was a lot, because Taron comes from the like theater kind of world. So he had a couple of his like long time like sketch buddies there to like help write those. And I wrote like a lot of like more topical like NFL monologue jokes. And I got to appear on screen twice. And the first time was for our like Thanksgiving spectacular. And I did a segment called Chef Pat that I wrote. And it was basically like, like a morning variety show where they're like, and now coming up to give you some cool like Thanksgiving recipes, it's Chef Pat. And then like, it gets really dark. And like, the more I talk about the recipes, the more you find out like my family left me, or I don't remember the specifics, but it was, it was a lot of fun. And I got to write it, and I that was like my first like acting, and it was cool. And then later in the season, they're like, we want you to go on screen again. And you got a bonus if you went on screen. So anytime they were like, go on screen, I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And played a character called Mayor McCheesesteak. They were previewing the Eagles-Chiefs Super Bowl, the first one that did not go well for my Eagles. And I went and they had me dress in full Mummers regalia. The Mummers is a parade in Philadelphia. It's sort of like a bootleg Mardi Gras. And my character's name was Mayor McCheesesteak, and I had to talk in a bad Philly accent. And then in post, they like superimposed like a cheesesteak over my head. So it's like it's my face in the middle of like a giant cheesesteak while I'm wearing like a Mardi Gras, like purple and green outfit. It's absolutely psychotic. And the first time I was on for the Chef Pat thing, I shared it on my Instagram. I'm like, oh, look at this. And then the second time I was like, the less said about this, the better. We're going to pretend this did not happen.
Yeah, a lot of people know that you wrote for BattleBots. Shout out to BattleBots and all that for a couple of seasons, Bounty Hunters and whatnot. But not a lot of people know we're getting into the deep shit here, Pat. We're taking you into the weeds. America's Top Dog.
Damn, dude. Yeah, all right. So yeah, the IMDb Pro is worth it because if you don't have IMDb Pro and you don't add that, nobody will ever check the writing credits for America's Top Dog. You have to add that yourself. There's nobody out there who's like, we got to make sure he gets credit for this. Yeah, what do you want to know? I forgot I did that.
Okay, so that's a money gig for sure.
Yeah.
What did they want in hiring you specifically? Like, I mean, you're known for writing sort of jokier stuff and whatnot. This is a show about dogs.
Yeah, I mean, someone's got to write the scripts. There's a play-by-play announcer, and it's kind of like American Ninja Warrior, but for dogs. If you haven't seen the show, which I'm assuming most people haven't, and when those shows start, the corny kind of shit that everybody says up top, somebody has to write that. And in this case, that person was me. I got a call during the pandemic from a buddy of mine I had worked on some other things with. And he was like, hey, I got a gig. It's remote, do you want it? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, anything that my integrity, artistic integrity went out the window a long time ago. I do not care. I will write for literally anything because I have a family to feed. And it was just kind of like, it's just dog puns. Dude, and the toughest part was like you had to write scripts for like 8 episodes, and you get to like page 2 of episode 1, and you're like, I'm out of dog puns. You just come out firing, and you're like, they say that every dog has its day, but only one pup's bark will be bigger than his bite as he raises the woof and tries to win. Whatever the fuck, you say all that shit, and then you get to page 2, and you're like, damn, dude, there's only so many dog puns you can make. But that was that gig. It was not fun, but there are worse ways certainly to make a dollar.
Right on. Yeah, no, I mean, you're working. Like, you are a working writer. And, you've written for some celebrity roasts, more than some. You're listed as Jeff Ross's personal writer. You've got a lot of credits.
Where is that?
In the comedy world. I don't know, somewhere on the internet.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah. But that's a big one. I think it was a booking agency website. Which one was it? Can't remember. A comedy booking agency lists you as Jeff Ross's personal writer as an accolade. Beyond that, let's move on. You've been hitting the gym hard, and it shows, brother. Good work. It's nice to see that there are people out there that are into self-improvement and moving forward in big ways. Like a lot of comedians out there, especially, a lot of the reason they're up there is therapy. Like you see it. They're on stage getting free therapy. Like, okay, this is how people perceive me and whatnot. How much of hitting the gym as hard as you have, what was it? I saw a post, you said 40 of 50 days this year you've hit the gym.
50 of 60, yeah.
50 of 60.
Although I missed the last 2 nights because of this all these jobs, but yeah.
So how much of that is like being on stage and wanting to have an image, and how much of is it like personal goals, self-improvement oriented?
I mean, a little bit of both. I don't care about the on-stage thing. If anything, the fatter you are on stage, the more likable you are, the more self-deprecating humor you can get away with. And from a battle perspective, not that I battle a ton anymore, but like what I learned is like, because my weight has ballooned up and down my entire life. or at least in the last 15 years, 20 years. What I've learned is no matter how much weight I lose, I'm always going to be fat enough to still be called fat in a roast battle. Like that, when I get up there thinking I look really, really good, my opponent comes out and calls me fat, and the place goes nuts, and I'm like, damn, dude, it's none of it matters. Yeah, so I don't care about the on stage thing. I do, want to, I don't want to look terrible, which is maybe that's like an LA thing. I don't know, but more than anything, it's just it's health. This isn't a funny answer, but like my dad died at 61, had a heart attack, and I'm just like, I don't really want to do that. I don't want to, I'd like to live, longer than that. I'd like to be in as good a health as possible. And I'm extra motivated right now because I at my peak, I was 320 pounds in college, and I'm only 5'8". So 5'8", 320, like you could do the math. That's not good. And then I got all the way down to 187. I lost 136 pounds in my mid-20s. And then I had a knee surgery, and I got up to like 220. And then 220 is kind of like my comfort zone. That's where I'm at. And I went to the doctor back in like October, and I weighed myself for the first time in a while, and I was 241. And I said, yeah, you know what? I'm turning 42 in April. If I lose 42 pounds, I'll get below 200 for the first time in 15 years. And I was like, let's go for it. So that was the day I started going really hard. I'm not weighing myself until my birthday. I have I guess 6 weeks left at this point. I have no idea if I'm going to hit the number, and it almost doesn't matter. Like I just went out and bought new clothes. I'm down a couple sizes on everything. So, ultimately that's the stuff that, matters. And it's one of those things where it's like, no matter what the scale says on my birthday, it's like the real journey was the friends we made along the way or whatever.
Speaking of that, rest in peace, Ken Flores.
Oh my God. Yeah. That was, brutal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard
so funny
community. I mean, it's been there's a common thread there. We lost Ralphie May, we lost Ken Flores. We lose people that choose to enjoy their life and be a bright flame that burns quick rather than take that slow burn approach. So,
yeah.
I like having you guys on my TV. Thanks for sticking around for us.
But yeah, well, thank you for giving me something to stick around for. Not you so much, more like my family or whatever. I'm like, wouldn't it be funny if it's like, yeah, I would kill myself if it wasn't for a roast babble. That's the whole reason I'm.
Oh my God,
I'm hanging on.
You and my 13 viewers, yeah. It's all right. It's growing. We'll get there. I mean, 3 episodes into anything. I mean, fuck. Look at what the Joe Rogan podcast was 3 weeks or 3 episodes in. It wasn't very much at all. So yeah. I'm gonna stick with it. You gotta start somewhere. No one starts at level 20 and all that kind of shit. It's repetition is the name of the game here.
That's before you get to your next question. I just want to say that is the key to putting together anything successful in this industry, is getting through the awkward phase of and I really struggle with this when I'm creating my own stuff. It's nobody cares. Nobody's watching this. Nobody likes it. That part is really tough. And some people are just impervious to that. Some people will. It always cracks me up when people have a Twitter and no followers, and they're just tweeting to just nobody, and it doesn't even phase them. But I get so self-conscious where it's oh no, nobody cares. And one thing the RBL has been great for is finding out how many people do care, specifically within the Patreon community, but also now that I'm on screen judging every week, I'll get recognized places. And I'm like, damn, dude, people are actually watching this thing. That's crazy. Even when you see the view count, you're nobody's watching this. So yeah, I mean, you just got to keep building it. Honestly, get through that awkward part and then you'll be good.
Yeah, it's real. I mean, and a lot of it has to do with how much willpower you've got to stick with it, like you say, and just keep your horns out and plow forward. But a lot of it is being clear with your intentions too, I think. In starting this, I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for the Roast Battle League Patreon. from the Patreon, I was asked to mod in the Discord community, be a moderator there. I'm now an administrator and whatnot. It was brought up that the community should have a podcast, like the Roast Battle community. I asked for help. I said, who's in? I can commit to one of these a month. Let's go, boys and girls. We can do this. And there were fucking dust balls and crickets. Like you could hear a cricket jacking off for real.
Yeah.
So I thought of some advice I got from a guy named Rob Schraub, who started Channel 101 with Dan Harmon, which was everything you do should be an example. Like, if you are presenting something, it should be exemplary of what that format is. So my aim here is to bring top tier roasters, comedians, organizers, people from within multiple organizations, and keep it engaging, keep it interesting, offer something that maybe not other podcasts do. Like, we go deep here, and that's just me. Like, you know, we're going to find out. I don't know how much of it has to do with me smoking weed, how much of it has to do with me just being this guy, but here we go.
I love it. I love it.
We've got a section on the show, a little segment we like to call the mailbag.
The mailbag.
Are these real questions from people?
This is an actual question from a Patreon member, a very active Discord participant as well. Shout out to him for that. This is from Brandon in Kelowna. He asks, I think we all know Austin has a buzzword edgy style, and I feel like New York has that too. But where Austin does it on purpose and come off try hard, whereas New York just has that style. It's not going to shock an audience. It's just ingrained in New York comedy. Just wondering if you see that too, or if you have any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, the Austin thing, definitely. I think I've said before, it's interesting to me how Austin has like two styles. One is this very like whimsical, fun, almost anti-roasting that people like Ryer Cameraman and Jimmy Moynihan and Ray Chenevier and guys like that are so good at pulling off. And then the other one is just like the darkest kind of humor possible. But I mean, I do agree that like there's a fine line, and I'm not going to make it city specific, but there's a fine line between being dark for the sake of being dark and having something really like clever to say. Yeah. You know, obviously one of the appeals of Roast Battle is that you can make a joke about anything. But are you doing it just to check that off of your bingo card? Or does it actually apply to your opponent? You know, I think New York is probably a little bit better at tying in the dark subject matter to their opponent, which, you know, to me, that extra layer of like thoughtfulness makes a big difference. So,
yeah, there's sort of meta, and I've talked about this with every guest so far because it's a running theme. There's a meta that happens in the stand-up world and in the roast battle community. Like, you look like X celebrity from Wish, blah blah blah, on Ozempic, all the low-hanging fruit, sort of like, you know, when all else fails, use a slur. Like,
yeah.
Do you feel like, oh, maybe it's just a little click, you know, and like people need to get it out of their system. They feel like they're getting the attention that they they couldn't otherwise get in saying something like that. Like, is it that, or is it fuck? Like, is it an epidemic in the comedy world? Is there a race to the bottom that's happening until we've got a whole art form that is based on just not getting it and how cool it is to feel when you say a slur on stage?
Well, look, I'm going to start with just an unfortunate truth. 90% of comedians are not good. That's what happens when you have an industry where there's absolutely no barrier of entry. Like, if I want to become a plumber, I have to go to school. I have to learn I can't just show up at somebody's house. There's no plumbing open mics where it's like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but let me into your bathroom. Like, that would never, ever happen. Every other, if you want to be a musician, you have to take lessons. You got to learn an instrument. Comedy is kind of the only thing where it's like, oh, you know, anybody can do it. And that feeling, that's why after you do a show and you know what went in, I could do a half an hour, right? And I know what went into it. It was years of cultivating and developing the material. It was years of honing like my comfort level on stage, to be able to handle, you know, crowd work type of situations, all that kind of stuff. And then you'll have some drunk guy come up to you afterwards and be like, my friends tell me I'm funny, I should do comedy. Like, you get that because it's the least respected art form because everybody thinks that they can do it. Because everybody at one time or another has been funny in conversation with friends and had been told like, oh, you should be a comedian. It's a completely different world, but they don't respect it. They don't understand it. And that's fine. But what happens is 90% of the people who try it are not going to be good at it. Same with if 90% of the people, if everybody was allowed to be a plumber without going to plumbing school, 90% of them would be really bad, probably. You know what I mean? It's any skill. So you have this world, and if you've been to open mics, you've seen it. Roast Battle just happens to be one of the shows where the barrier of entry is pretty low in terms of like experience and ability and skill and everything like that, because it's harder to book. Here in LA, there's 100 million comedians. There's maybe 100 roast battlers, and 100 is a lot for a city. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of people don't want to do it for one reason or another. They don't want to, you know, get their feelings hurt. They don't want to hear truths about themselves. They don't want to put in the effort to like write the jokes, whatever the reason may be. So it's kind of open to everybody. And that in turn leads to a lot of people who have no business, frankly, being up there. It also really highlights the greats where you're like, oh my God, you're so much better at this than, you know, the other people on the show. But I think, I think that's part of it. And I think also part of it is, how much do the people in the city know about the league? What is their goal? When I showed up, the goal was I wanted to write for the Comedy Central roasts. And, you see the Baldwin poster and the Brady scripts. Like I accomplished that. Yeah. But every battle I went in was something to prove, which is like, I want to prove to everybody in this room that I'm one of the best roast writers in the country. Right. I don't think that's the goal for a lot of, I talk to people in certain cities and they're like, I didn't even know there was a league. I'm like, yeah, we're on our third season. Like, and they're like, so basically we've created this thing, but I don't have the time to talk to 2,000 battlers across the world. So the information has to get disseminated through whoever runs their city. So it comes down to, what is that person doing? You look at Tokyo, it's a great example. They had their team aligned. This is the RBL. We want to win the championship. They won the championship. Everybody knows what they're trying to do. And then you get to other cities, they're like, I don't know. I just show up and like we fuck around with our friends and it's fun. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think that will lead to more lazy writing and slurs and stuff like that, because they're like, I'm not trying to prove anything to anybody. I'm not trying to go to the championships. I didn't even know there was a championship. I'm just here to call my friend the F word and have a couple beers. And, that's how they're doing it. And I think that's one of the main reasons behind it.
Okay, so it's safe to say that the heads of cities are really the ones that should be disseminating that information to their communities. Like, they should maybe step up as community heads if they want to be successful within the Roast Battle League.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Ideally, that would be the way. And, you just get some people who, I think what they get out of it is the ability to use the Roast Battle name and the ability to kind of market themselves that way. And they're focused more on like, okay, how do I sell tickets for my event in my city? And at any point during the season, you could be like, hey, who's leading your division? And they're like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's but to be clear, these people are all working for free. I put together a league on no budget. You know what I mean? It's not like when we can afford to start paying people, then we can afford to start having expectations and be like, no, you have to do X, Y, and Z. For now, these people are there. Everybody is working for free. So it's hard for me with a straight face to go in and be like, you need to shape up and get your act together.
Pat, you've got a whole gang of people around the globe working for exposure, dude.
Yeah, but I mean, that's one of the shitty things about comedy. And don't get me wrong, in those cities, like if you're using the Roast Battle name to sell tickets, I'm sure that they are profiting off of it. And hopefully, their battlers are too, because I don't micromanage the money. But like, Comedy is very much an industry where you get paid in drink tickets and mozzarella sticks for a solid decade. And it creates this illusion that everybody should be working for free and that our art is valueless, frankly, in terms of like money. So I'm always really, and again, I don't get involved with the money, but like I'm always, I always have like a weird sinking feeling about that where it's like we're all doing this, myself included, by the way. I don't take any salary from Roast Battle. But we're all doing this basically for the love of the game and to try to grow this thing and take it to the next level. But that being said, it's hard for me to be like, we're giving you so much exposure right now. It's a dirty word. I hate it.
Especially after your story about working with the NFL for a t-shirt. That's great.
Yeah.
Full circle. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a big fan of tying it all together in that way.
Yeah. You just did a perfect callback and I forgot that I even said that thing earlier. So nicely done.
It's a crazy thing because this brand, Roast Battle League, has so much exposure right now. There's buzz around it always, like always. It's viral. You've just had this huge thing with Donnell Rawlings. That's an eggshell that I almost don't want to crack.
Are you looking to me for approval?
I'm just saying, like it's a lot to talk about, and everyone's already seen the videos. You know,
right.
Like you were there, the look on your face said it all, really. But I don't want to talk about specific RBL events. I want to talk about the reach of the global league is what I'm driving at here. Like, okay, it's working for exposure, but at the same time, it's joining a global brand. And not only that, more than that, you said something very important, that you're all doing it for love. Like, there's a huge difference. If you're going up there because, you know, it gets you a free beer, that's different than going up there because you want to showcase your writing. And the sort of cream of battlers, they're all rising to the top through all this because there are a lot of comedians out there doing it for therapy or drink tickets or whatever. And, you know, like, nothing wrong with that. But if that's your only motivation, then you're missing a lot. Like,
I mean, I do think one thing that I stand by is, with the exception of like Kill Tony, which is this weird anomaly right now where like you have one good minute and some sort of developmental disability, you can become like famous. You know, you can become like a regular.
Golden ticket.
Yeah, exactly. But no, a lot of people have been very successful as a result of that show, and I think it's great. With the exception of that show, there are not many other shows where you could be like, oh yeah, I'm a year into comedy and I'm going to London to compete for the world championship, or I'm booked to perform on the main stage at the mothership. Like, there are people who come in and, you know, they start with Roast Battle. There are people who come in and start battling now before they do stand-up, which is very interesting to me. But like, we're seeing it more and more, and there are not many shows out there like ours that offer the opportunities that ours does. And the opportunities are going to go, relatively speaking, to a very small number of people. But I try my best to give them to the people who really deserve them. Because that's one thing LA and the industry in general does not do, is it's not a meritocracy. It doesn't reward, you know, I mean, it does reward talent and hard work and all that, but there's a lot of truth to the, like, it's who you know, all that kind of stuff, connections. And my favorite part about being the commissioner and getting to book these things is like, I'm legitimately, I feel like rewarding the people who are working the hardest at it. I don't care if they have 1 million followers or none. It doesn't matter.
Well, that's it. You've just got to stick your foot out the door and see what grabs it, I feel. Networking is a verified path to success, and this whole Roast Battle brand, it's turned into a network. Like, I'm even leveraging your reach right now. Like, I mean, I'm talking to you. I'm a guy that paid $5 a month to buy you a coffee.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Yeah,
appreciate it.
There you go. Cheers, Pat. But there's a lot that you can get out of it if you have the mind for it. If you want to be successful within this, there's no limit. But it's an emerging archetype. Like, it's an art form that's been around for a long time. The Friars Club has been here since Dean Martin, but the current structure of it and path up the pyramid, up the ladder, is something that's being developed in real time. We're pioneering this road, and sort of making up the rules as we go, but that doesn't mean the rules are disappearing after we do. We are establishing the archetype for this whole process, this ladder climb, in the same way, like you say, that people climb a ladder in Kill Tony. You know,
Yeah.
there's even a minor league now in Roast Battle. It's
Yeah. Just providing that outlet for people to prove themselves, I think, is important because, you said the word networking and it has such a negative connotation out here in LA. I kind of recoiled when you said it, like, networking. But I think, a lot of people look at networking as like, buddying up with like the headliners and being like, hey, what's going on? And we've all seen like shameless networkers out here who are not talented. It happens, of course, a lot. But, in this case, networking just refers to having this like worldwide community, having the opportunity to be like, you know what? I would love to go to Tokyo, and not, can you guys fly me to Tokyo? Can you put me up? But like, I'm going to plan my vacation around doing a battle out there. Or I'm going to be in London anyway. Can I battle while I'm out there? And it's like, yeah, I'll hook you up with the guy. Let's talk about it. So I think there's a lot of like opportunities like that. And as far as like you say, working your way up the ladder. Yeah. Before Roast Battle, and shout out to Brian Moses, because the show has changed my life. I wouldn't have any of that stuff that I have now, any of those credits without Roast Battle. I don't know what would have happened, but before then, I don't know how you got into that room. Roast Battle created a way for me to get up there in front of Jeff Ross and in front of those guys and have them be like, damn, this guy can write a fucking joke. And then you get your foot in the door and you kick it in, but it didn't exist before. So yeah, it's great.
From where I'm at, like I'm 5,000 kilometers or miles, whatever you want to call it, at least both, from the Comedy Store in LA. So like to know that people just, before it was like, all right, that's Mitzi's club for a generation or so. Paulie's in there, blah, blah, blah. But there weren't, unless you were a door guy or you were a hang-around, basically, like you weren't getting on those stages unless you were booked at an event. Like you couldn't just show up, say, hey, I want a roast battle, get me up there, and be some fucking random off the street. Like, no offense to some of the battlers, especially the undercards in LA, but holy fuck, they let them on stage. And it does bring, it does showcase the writers, because you realize that, oh, this person is not a joke writer. This is some drunk fuck on coke that's like, it has their head up their ass. They have no idea. But if someone fillets them on stage, it's still a great battle. Like,
yeah,
but I'm seeing that more and more with Kill Tony, with Roast Battle. There's a lot more, and Jay brought this up too. It was a dirty word like networking, hacks. They're emerging, they're coming out of the woodwork, but without that filter, there's more gray area. They stick around, like
yeah. The concern I have now is everybody controls everything in terms of getting their stuff out there. Like I said, there's no barrier to entry to do comedy. But back in the day, if you wanted to have any level of success, you kind of had to get on TV, and was it a fair system? No, of course not. But it weeded out a lot of people, because a lot of people will, like, who are really bad at comedy will still do it for a while, but then they'll be like, this isn't going anywhere. Let me, tap out. And you kind of cycle through them. Now it's like you just film everything. You film everything and you try to do crowd work and you just try to get clips. Because if a clip goes viral, then you could, and that's what constitutes success now, by the way. It's not joining the Writers Guild. It's not, making money. It's not supporting your family. It is views and likes and shares. And that's the currency now, right? Yeah. So I think more people are going to stick around longer bombing and being terrible, because they feel like they can also control the back end of it now, their success, air quotes. And then, B, it only takes one moment. That's the other thing. You could bomb 50 times in a row. If you have one moment where like you're like, so what do you do for, you know, for fun? And then the guy's like, oh, I'm fucking this guy's wife. And you're like, whoa, what? And like you walk into like this great crowd work, like people will keep plugging away, and it's like they're getting more and more comfortable bombing, I feel like, which is not good.
Yeah, it's changing the status quo and not for the good. Everything's getting watered down. Like, I hate to keep tapping on a specific brand, but man, Kill Tony, people get up there, wow, you were so good, and they adulate them so hard for nothing. How long have you been doing comedy? A month. Like, it's not great, because there's a reason that a seasoned veteran knows what they're doing and how to work in any situation. If you give someone an opportunity that they're not ready for, they're going to take a lot of that opportunity for granted. They're going to get an ego the size of fucking Texas, whatever it happens to be, you know? Like, I think that curation is something that is very valuable in this world. And now everyone's a curator. Everyone's curating their own bullshit, like you say. So these filters, these brands, these siphons, these pyramids with, you know, trackable structures are very important. And that's very much a part of what drew me to Roast Battle. Like,
And let me just add to that real quick, because I just had this thought and I'm not sure it makes sense, and I want to say it before I forget it. And full disclosure, I haven't seen an episode of Kill Tony since like 2016. I went through a couple years where I was like really, really into it, and I respect it. It's just not my thing. But I haven't seen it since like they had Jeremiah and the old band on and shit like that. But obviously, you know, it's blown up, which has attracted more and more people. And like, to be really clear, when they started doing like arenas, and people were like, I'm going to put my name in the bucket. Like, you're going to make your stand-up debut at Madison Square Garden? Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like,
right. And meanwhile, Andrew Dice Clay is getting shelved.
He's what?
Getting shelved. Like, they're not giving him time, but they're giving someone who had 8 beers his minute.
Oh, right,
you know what I mean?
And they have to do it that way. That's the whole premise of the show. You're pulling names. That's what makes it appealing. That's why people love it, because they see themselves in it and they're like, oh, I could do that, right? But it is crazy, because then what happens is, if you have a good minute, all of a sudden you have a career, and comedy clubs are booking these guys based on how many tickets they could sell. And people don't realize how hard it is to put together 45 minutes of comedy, like a good 45-minute act. Or even if you go on tour with like other, you know, viral celebrity, 20 is really, really tough. It feels like it's the equivalent of like, if you ever go to an NBA game and at halftime they have a fan shoot a half-court shot.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, if you make it, you win a car. But like, the comedy version of that seems to be like, you make it, now you're in the NBA. And it's like, just because you made a half-court shot doesn't mean that you're good enough to be in the NBA, you know? But that's their book. It's not just Kill Tony. I mean, I you know, it's shameful, but I do a lot of writing on the side for like a really popular like TikTok guy who has just ventured into stand-up the last couple of years. He's done probably like 20, 30 shows, and the average crowd size is in the thousands. Because these headliners who sell out these like 5 to 20,000 seat venues, a lot of times they will stack the sort of undercard with like TikTok guys who they know could sell tickets, who they know they'll be able to follow no problem, because it's like, this guy's barely doing comedy. So he goes up and he does 5 minutes in front of like 20,000 people. And it's like, yeah, I've been doing it, you know, 20 years, and like, yeah, I'll never have an opportunity like that. But it's the game. Like, it is what it is. You know, it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah, if I had to call it that, you know, doing open mics in arenas seems like the money path. Like, if you want material wealth, try and get on Kill Tony. Get yourself a golden ticket. Do 5 minutes in front of a TikTok guy, you know. But that's a weird hill to die on for me. I see that, and a lot of people just want to be that bright flame that burns out in a short time. But I'm here for the real ones, man. Like the OGs and people who want to build something. Like, it's so flaky to me to see people taking those opportunities for granted. It's frustrating, and it's again why I really like the brand that you're building here. Like it's built on love. It shows.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. We try.
Yeah. And again, big shout out to Brian Moses. My God. So 2025 season, Pat.
Yeah.
We have another section. The whole show's kind of roast news, but we have another segment on here we like to do called Roast News.
Roast news.
So it's the head of the 2025 season right now for the Global Roast Battle League. I know that you've got big stakes in the USA, but can we talk a little bit about the Global League in 2025 here? What's coming up that we should watch for?
I mean, we just recorded our first RBL Weekly of the season, and it just feels so good to be back in kind of the groove of, what we're going to be doing for the next 8 months, which is everybody putting on their best battles, sending them in, and just kind of seeing, what the next step in the evolution is. I think if you go back and watch an RBL Weekly from season 1, like the strides we've made, not only in the presentation of like the podcast and like how we cover it, but like how good the battles are, is crazy. What I'm always looking forward to is finding out who is going to take that big step forward. Because we're so early in the game. Like when you look at like Jack Trainer from Scotland was the MVP last year. He battled once the season before. Malia Simon was one of the biggest stars last year. She didn't make the podcast in season 1 at all. Mm-hmm. We hadn't seen her. Nate Welch was a guy who was, he won the most improved, and nobody expected like the run that he went on last year. So what I'm looking at is like when you try to handicap the MVP race, and we do these fantasy drafts, and it's like people are taking, in the first couple rounds, the same kind of names, but there's a very good chance that whoever ends up being the MVP this year either didn't battle before this year or maybe had one or two and like was completely off the radar. That's what I love, is seeing like the new faces pop up.
Yeah, I love watching it too. Like there's always new faces to watch for every season that they emerge, and some of them just take off. Like Malia is one of those for sure. And now everyone's got eyes on John Ajota, speaking of New York.
Yeah.
The guy's in uncharted territory every battle. Like
he's constantly like reinventing the art form. He's always trying something new. I respect the swings so much. And the majority of them hit, which is crazy. It's tough to take a big swing and have it connect, certainly at the rate he does. But I think John is incredible. I'm hoping we get to do a lot of cool things with him this year. We're heading out to New York, Moses and myself, for our first event at the Comedy Cellar, the legendary Comedy Cellar. We'll be there April 6th. All of the New York heavy hitters are battling. Ajota is battling Dan Wicks. And then we're doing a showcase in the main room here in LA on May 8th that I'm in the final stages of putting together. The names on that one are going to be crazy. And I was really trying to go through the early processes of getting Ajota versus Keith Carey, which we put on RBL Weekly as like a past versus present dream match. And as I was just putting that episode together, and the more I thought about it, the more I'm like, God damn, that would be incredible. I'll bet we could do it. And schedule-wise, it didn't work out for John, but we have big names coming in May, and that's definitely one of my dream matches I would like to make happen this season. So we will see.
I'm excited to know that dream matches are going to start happening in the league.
Potentially. Yeah. I would, you see like Jay Light coming back, and you see Tom Goss coming back and getting involved in it. And, I think there's a lot of like legends from back in the day that kind of, stepped out of it. And some of them stepped out as a very deliberate kind of thing. Like, oh, I want to focus on, whatever. But others were probably like, I was doing it for, years, and it just kind of like got stale, and now it feels like fresh and reinvigorating. And so, I would love to get some of those guys kind of back in the game. And I think we will. Definitely. And the beautiful thing about those like dream matches is like those guys are still Keith is as good as he ever was. It's not like that goes away, you know?
Oh yeah.
It's like imagine if the NBA could settle the LeBron versus Jordan debate by just like if you could have Jordan if both battlers are kind of down to do it, you know?
There it is. I'm curious about the new faces, yeah, but like as well as that, there's so many new things to see this year. We've got the B League starting. What are you guys calling that now? The Wobble or something?
So I had these meetings with these cities and I'm like, I don't know what to call this thing, right? And the examples I gave were, I asked them to help me come up with a name. And the examples that I gave were like the NBA has the G League and WWE has NXT, which is my favorite because it symbolizes like, oh, these guys are like next up, right? So that was kind of like my North Star. And I was like, I want to do something similar to that. And nobody really gave me a few people pitch names that like weren't really like hitting for me. And then we were in like our last meeting before the start of the season. And I remember our San Diego rep was unable to make it. And somebody pitched the WRBL, which is like a parody, of course, of the WNBA. Yeah. And I'm like, well, what does the W stand for? And they were just like laughing and they were like, I don't know, right, like writers. And I'm like, well, what if it was just roast misspelled, like WROAST? And everybody kind of laughed at it, but it's like, I just had so much on my plate where I'm like, I can't sit around thinking of a name for this thing. Nobody gave me anything better. I guess it's the WRBL. So we were judging in San Diego. They had their first event of the season and it was a great event. And like the crowd had a great time. And at the end of the show, James Regal from Barcelona, who was in town, he was like, yeah, you guys are in like the new league. He's like, Brian, why don't you tell him what it's called? And Moses was like, it's the WRBL. And you could see that the guy who hosts San Diego, Gordon, had no idea that that's what we had decided to roll with. And he was like, I don't like that at all. And he was like visibly perturbed, which I get. But so I guess the name could still change, but I think as of right now, we're rolling with WRBL. But if anybody is asking and wants to take it seriously, it stands for writers, not women.
I feel like that is right on brand. Like this is a crucible. Roasting and being in a roast battle is literally standing in the fire without getting burned, you know, like not taking it personally and whatnot. So if you don't want to be in the minors, in the little boy league, in the WNBA of roasting, then step up your game. You know, like I'll put a call out to all the city heads in the WRBL. Ha, fuckers. Step it up. Step it up.
Yeah.
You don't want your city to be in the minors. You don't want to be in the WRBL. Then get your shit together, man. Get the content out there. Get your YouTube popping and your Instagram. Give us some shit to react to, or we're not going to know you exist. And you're just going to be having a beer with your buddies in your little incel lounge. So come on out.
Yeah. And we gave them all RBL logos. They're officially part of the RBL. They get to market themselves as Roast Battle San Diego and Berlin and New Orleans and all that. So it doesn't really change much of anything. It's just kind of more like an inside joke. But I am excited about the league in general. There's a couple of cities that I think are really legitimate. Like they could be in the main league tomorrow and they would fit right in. Frankly, the need for that league was I just couldn't add any more to my plate. And I was like, you know, if we add 4 more cities to the league, that's 4 more battles that everybody has to watch and rank every week. And, you know, it's already a lot. So we came up with kind of this idea, and Tom Goss and Mike Eaton have taken charge on it. And I know they recorded their first WRBL Weekly the other day, which is going to be Patreon exclusive. So I'm excited about that. The Patreon community will get more content that other people aren't. And I'm able to turn those guys loose and be like, you know, I'll point you in the right direction. And then I don't want to hear anything about it. You guys do your thing.
That's great. The more it goes, the higher the top of the pyramid gets. Like it's getting big. It's getting big. I'm curious about what's going to happen globally. I mean, you can see in the minor leagues some cities taking off. Big shout out to New Orleans and big shout out to Cleveland. They're putting in the work and it shows. I'm hoping to see the same from San Diego, from all the others. But globally, Japan is really
Yeah.
putting it on right now, and Scotland too. I'm seeing a lot of like there's a little crackle in the air there.
Yeah. And I think that one thing, I loved so much the Japan story last year. It was a true like David versus Goliath thing because I think one of the things that I struggle with, and I haven't found a good answer to it, a good solution is New York and LA are always going to have an advantage. They just are. There's more good comedians moving to those cities. And LA, maybe not like it was, but the talent pool is so much deeper. Whereas you look at a Chicago and it's like some of their best battlers from the last few seasons are gone. Eric Emerson moved, Matthew Mitchell moved, Stephanie Robertson is getting ready to move. Like so many people cycle through Chicago on their way to the next place that they have to like turn their roster over almost every season. And there's really no way to balance that. But I'm excited about the wild card this year. We're adding 2 more playoff teams, and I think that is going to give people something to really fight for. I mean, if that was the case last year, Chicago, Austin, and the Bay Area were all within, I think, 3 or 4 points at the end of the year, which would have made for a hell of a wild card race. Instead, they were just distant seconds to New York and LA. But I think that'll motivate people. People, I hope they look at Tokyo and they're like, damn, man, we can really do this thing because it's not good for the show if it's New York or LA winning every year. That's not fun. So Tokyo pulling it off, I thought was really, really cool.
It's neat the dynamic city to city. I find like even globally, every league has a sort of different feel and approach to it. Like Japan is very, very grassroots feeling in the same way that Bay Area is. Like it's a tight room and it's warm in there, like there's rarely a cold room on what they present. And it shows. I like to see that. Whereas New York and LA, it's polished, it's slick, the audio is going to be there and like all these things. So yeah, there's big differences across the map. And they're starting to cross-pollinate. Like as they do that more, there's going to be a more uniform like feel to all the cities when they get it.
Yeah. But by the same token, I don't want it to be too uniform. I think that's kind of the beauty of the thing is that everybody kind of and I from the beginning I was like I don't want to micromanage how you do it. That's why like the Bay Area does 4 jokes per battle and Chicago does 7 and it's like Scotland does 1 billion and it's like do your thing. Like I like the different styles and all that. And obviously when you get to like these like city versus city events you have to have rules. But I like everybody kind of doing their own thing. And you talked about like Tokyo, like that community is just, and it comes from the fact that none of them are trying to be famous comedians. They're like, yeah, we live in Tokyo. This is not the place to live if you're trying to be a famous comedian. We live here because we love it. And then also we happen to do comedy on the side because it's fun. It's fun. There's a different sense of community. And that's why like whenever we have conversations with like, if Netflix were to come to us tomorrow and we're like, we want to do a 20 episode season, what does that look like in your mind? The first 16 episodes are going to the 16 cities. There's a different city every week. And they know when we're coming there and they put on their best event with their best battlers. And there's more behind the scenes stuff. If you watch that championship documentary that Chris Grieco cut, the behind the scenes stuff, like to me, that stuff is fascinating. I want to take people like the first time I went to Tokyo to battle and saw how tight that community was. I'm like, that's the story. That's what I would love for people to see. So I like that every city kind of has their own thing. And I hope that we can continue to find different ways to show that.
I'm a big believer in balance. So chaos, order, all those things. And it's like as it ramps up to the global tournament, it gets more and more structured. Like it gets pulled into that, all right, this is the big league. This is what it looks like at the top. So it's neat. And as well, the structure allows for individual comedians' intentions to come through. If they want to stay local and have a beer with their buddies, they can be that. If they want to be on a ladder, if they want to be schmoozing and fucking celebrities, then they can try and do that too. Like,
sure.
it's the diversity is astounding in this. It's crazy. There's this razor's edge between slurs and prejudice and full on acceptance. And it shows so much to me when someone just doesn't get it. They're up there to say slurs
Yeah.
versus like a, oh my God, like a Julian or Effie Meadows that's like straight up calling someone an F bomb out of nowhere. There's something there that needs to be tapped on in today's world. 2025 is fucked up for rules. You know, like there's a cool compass in roast battle. I like it. I like the diversity, but there's that race to the bottom feels ever present to me. It's always there, just like waiting, like all that daddy Warbucks money from the clan and whoever is just fucking waiting to be injected into this program. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, now you're talking beyond roast battle. I think you're talking on just like a global sort of everyday level. Yeah, definitely. And, you know, I guess it takes some of the edginess off when the world is what the world is. Like all of a sudden what we're doing doesn't seem so taboo. I think that was part of the appeal. It's a weird double-edged sword because I think part of the appeal of like roasting from like 2016 to like 2022 was like, oh, we're in the cancel culture era and you can't say anything anymore. And this show, like you could say whatever you want, which like, I think that's some of the appeal, but by the same token, like, that's not what it's about. It was not, I don't want to become one of these free speech weirdos where it's like, yeah, this is where you can come say all the fucked up shit. You can, but to me, I care more about like the joke writing and like the friendship aspect of it. Like we're all real, my best friends are people that I've battled. So we don't lean heavily on that like right wing, like free speech bullshit. We would probably be more successful if we did the grift where we're like, oh yeah, the left is trying to cancel us and the libs. I don't want this to be a political show. I don't want this to have some sort of like we're free speech warriors fighting for, you know, the last line of defense against none of that. It's none of that, man. We're just having fun. And sometimes we like busting each other's balls and that's a fun thing to do. And that's kind of what we're doing. And, you know, if you read more into it, that's on you. I mean, we get at least one comment every week, I feel like on the YouTube where people are like, I'm done with this woke show. And it's like, all right, I don't think you know what that word means. You just use it to describe anything you don't like because
Yeah, that's crazy.
Our entire show is based around, you know, racism, sexism, transphobia, like I don't get how we could be woke. I guess it's because we're actually putting like trans people on stage and giving them an opportunity to respond. It's like, oh yeah, we want the slurs, but we don't want them to have a voice. No, fuck that, man. Everybody gets a voice. This is not about hate. It's about love. And if you were one of those guys who's like, I thought this was like a free speech thing, and no, it's not. You don't have to watch it. That's fine. But that's kind of our stance.
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, there's even battlers stepping back. Like I was watching one of the most recent RBL weeklies, and people are straight up trying to paint the brand into a corner and put their own intentions on top of it. That's definitely not what I'm trying to do here. You can't define it. It's such a chaotic art form, and it's different every battle, let alone every broadcast, every episode, every season. Like it's an emerging art form. It's made for anybody.
I think whatever people get out of it is great. If people are enjoying it, I'm not here to tell them what they should or shouldn't enjoy about it. That's totally fine. I'm just saying, to me, it was never. That's not what it's about to me. But if that's your thing and that's why you like it, like that's cool too. I just think that in general in the world, people have gotten to a point where a lot of people think everything should be catered to them. And if you're not doing exactly what they want to do, then you're fucking up. And you can't run a show that way where it's like, we got to make everybody happy, because you never, ever, ever will.
I'm a guy who comes from the court of wit. I used to sit around with old men, and this is a total aside, and smoke joints and drink brandy and talk shit. Like we would hold court and just roast the fuck out of each other, tell stories and whatnot. So that kind of drew me here, but it's a compass too. Like, what do people think out there? Like, everybody's on that stage, and it's entertaining first and foremost. It's comedy. I'm a fan of comedy, but it's that court of wit thing that I'm about. You know, like to me, first and foremost, roast battle is meant to be, and this is my bullshit, a writer's showcase. That's why
Yeah.
I'm there. I can, like, man, I can walk down the street and a redneck in his truck can roll down his window and yell slurs. Like, that's not why I'm there. And, you know, a redneck in the audience might find that entertaining. Fucking half the audience might be rednecks, might not be my room. That's okay. I'll skip the battle. Like,
Yeah, everybody, but I'm with you. Everybody has their own reason for enjoying it. But when I came up, it was really, that was the whole thing. It's the writer showcase. So I like the writing. But, you know, I'd like to think the cool thing about the show is that there is something for everybody. And, you know, there's battlers who are like big personalities and less on the writing. And there, you know, people are trying different things, and you got to have different styles, or else it will never work. If, like, Shaq was great, but if every player, all I do is NBA metaphors, by the way. I've realized this. It's like my fifth one today. But if every player was Shaq, the NBA would be terrible, right? You can't have it. So, yeah, something for everybody.
The tour bus would be a fucking nightmare. Speaking of diversifying, you've started, and speaking of being a sports fan mostly, that's the segue there. You started a fantasy league for Roast Battle.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that for us a little bit? Like, is that Patreon exclusive?
It is. It is Patreon exclusive. We have 27 participants in the inaugural season, which we had to stretch into 3 leagues because I didn't want on draft day anybody to have to figure out, because you got to have one player from every city. I didn't want on draft day anybody to be like, who's the 27th best battler in Atlanta? That's not fair to do to anybody. So we have 3 different leagues, 9 people in each league. The idea behind it was twofold. Number one, just community engagement. Like, I'm always trying to find ways to give the community something different than just like, oh, here's the early and uncensored release. Like, you get that too, but like, I do want to try to build the community, which is tough sometimes with how much I'm working. But like, those fantasy drafts were fun, man. Just people getting together and, you know, going through that whole process was great. And then number 2, it's kind of a happy medium because, you know, one of the things that Moses and I, to let everybody on the inside a little bit, one of the things we argue about constantly is whether or not gambling is like a part of like the future of Roast Battle. I think he looks at it like it is a big part, and someday everybody will log on to FanDuel and pick their winners for the Roast Battle that night. For me, it's a subjective art form. The judges are actively on drugs half the time. You know, undercard battles, you're letting the crowd vote. Like they're bringing, you know, their friends to the show. You have battlers at the Netflix festival. Chelsea Handler just straight up voted for every woman and was like, yeah, I'm voting for every woman. Imagine I put $10,000 on a battle and the dude clearly won, and the last judge is like, well, I'm voting for the woman. I would burn LA to the ground. That's insane. Like, yeah, you can't have people putting actual money on that. So the thing with the fantasy league is it's like, you know, you do have to be like a member of the Patreon, which is a paid thing, but there's no additional cost to that. Everybody gets to enter for free, and there is a cash prize at the end. That way it's not really a gambling thing. I don't want anybody to like lose money on betting on roast battles, because it is just so subjective. If you think about it, there's no subjective sports that you can bet on. Everything is concrete. Like you put the ball in the net. There's no gray area there. That's how you score. Roast battle is a lot more open to whatever. So, this kind of scratches both itches. It makes him feel like we're doing a big like gambling thing, and it makes me feel able to sleep at night.
Very clear there that, roast battling is not a skill-based competition. So putting odds on that, like, I mean, it sucks to say it black and white like that, but it's not a skill-based competition a lot of the time. It's in the moment, in the room. If you catch that spark, then you've got the crowd for the rest of the battle.
And not to say that there's not skills there, but like it's subjective, right? Like I would never bet on Olympic gymnastics, because what if the Russian judge gives who's the U.S. girl who's incredible? I'm blanking on her name right now. Anyway, I'm just remembering, like, I'm so old, I'm remembering the whole like 92 roster. I'm like, Dominique Mosciano. But what if one of the judges is like biased and he gives her like a 9.2 and she loses? Like, I'm not taking that chance on anything, especially in like roast battle where, the judges are friends with the battlers. It just seems like a recipe for disaster. So, but the fantasy league is very fun, and I think people are into it. And I think when this week's RBL weekly drops and points really start coming in and people start seeing like how their teams are shaping up, I think that they're gonna get psyched.
Okay, so there's 3 leagues for the Patreon members. On RBL Weekly, you did a fantasy draft with Jay Light and Brian Moses as well. So is that a private league with just the 3 of you in it? Who's in that league?
It's just the 3 of us, and it exists mostly to talk shit on Moses. That's the entire reason. And I will say, without spoiling, like what battles placed on the podcast this week, and I guess if people want to, I don't know when you're dropping this, the podcast might already be out by the time that you drop this. If not, if people really want to sleuth and look at the rosters, they could probably figure out what battles ranked where. But the score update at the end of this week was I have 32 points, Jay has 15, and Moses has 0. So I'm hoping this continues for the entire season. I have nothing to win. I just want to all season be like, what happened, dude? What's your roster doing? I just want to bust his balls. So
that's crazy.
Plus we needed to fill, you got to come up with ways to fill episodes. And I'm like, that seems like a fun thing. And that was maybe my favorite episode we've done, to be honest.
That's great. It's a cool way. Like you say, you talked about building community again. And like, I've been that guy for my whole life, one way or another. That's a cool way to do it because it's a reflection of what's happening in the community, but it's the names that people join the Patreon to see doing it. So it's like, it puts you in the same boat in a very neat way. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody is joined up that's going to join up for
correct. Yeah.
The 2025 league. What's the cash prize you mentioned?
$500 to the winner. Some roast battle merch. And because we had to split it into 3 leagues, we're going to do something where because right now the grand prize goes to whoever has the highest point total among the 3 people who win their leagues. Right. But we'll do something where if you win your league, but you're not the highest scoring league winner, you'll get something. We'll figure it out, but it's $500 grand prize for the winner.
Right on. Yeah. I mailed him a gold star.
Exactly.
Oh man. Moses with 0 points. That's got a sting. And Jay too. Jay took, I just watched that this morning when I was trying to catch up on everything and finish tail ending research. Jay took all the fucking top picks, basically.
Yeah.
He has people that have only lost once on his roster and whatnot, and he's got half your points right now.
It's only a week. It's very, very early in the season. But yeah, I definitely had a strategy that I expected to pay dividends early. And so far, so good. We'll see. But, the beauty of roast battle is, you say, oh, somebody who's only lost one time. The majority of the way you get famous in this thing is not by winning or losing. It's by putting on great battles. You know what I mean? There's a reason that last season's MVP, Jack Trainer, when you factor in the playoffs, went 4-5. He had a losing record, but he had the best battles in the league. Paige Wesley is a legend in this thing. She's lost more than she's won. So, that's another thing that I like is that the league revolves around rewarding, putting on a show as opposed to, winning and losing. That's almost secondary for a lot of it. But I like my squad.
Yeah, for sure. You brought that up. Like, it's so much nicer to see comedians work together on stage to put on a performance that they're both a part of than to just be up there with their head up their ass, all in their ego and fucking hoping to win. Like, it shows when they're working together. Some of the top battlers are really good at that. Jack is one. Him and Shalaka on stage, their dynamic was fucking dynamite. Nate as well. Like, there's a lot of them that really are catching it, and their arcs for growth are fucking blowing me away. Like, it's nice to see. The top of that being the London tournament.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it was incredible. And when you say work together, it's not like, oh, they're writing the jokes and telling each other the jokes ahead of time. They're doing their own thing and they're trying to win, but they're also not trying to take away from their opponent. Jack laughs at his opponent's jokes more than anybody. Paige does the same thing. She's not up there trying to like act like, oh, that wasn't funny, to like convince the crowd that she's funnier. She's up there having fun. And when you have fun, it shines through. I always, when I was battling more often, like if I was looking at a potential opponent, I would pick them for one of two reasons. Either I was really excited to write about them, or I was really excited to hear what they would write about me. So when you're battling people you respect, you can't lose. You really can't. You go up there, and I always equated it to like two rappers like collabing on like a track, right? Like they both want to have the best verse. They both want to win. But at the end of the day, if they both kill it, that's a big win for both of them. You know, like their objective is, they don't go in hoping like, boy, I hope the other guy on this track is terrible, so people will be like, oh yeah, he won. It's like, no, you want them to be good too, so people are like, oh, that song is fucking, that's great. I love that. So that's what we want out of Roast Battle. You should root for your opponent to do well too.
I love that. Yeah, we roast the ones we love, right? That's what Jeff says.
Yep.
It's cool to me to see it linked through history. Like, I mean, I said Friars Club earlier. This whole roasting on a dais thing has been happening for a lot longer than Roast Battle. Like, it goes way back. We're more than half a century deep in this now, on camera roasting. So it's really cool. Like, this is the cutting edge. We're at the front of it right now. These celebrity dais roasts, this format, Roast Battle. It's cool to be a part of the history of it all.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the Brady roast was the revival of the dais. The things they changed, putting it in an arena, airing it live, things that I thought for sure were destined to be disasters ended up being great, and it feels like it's reinvigorated the art of the roast. And I think, yeah, between that and Roast Battle, I think there's a very bright future for talking shit to people.
Hell yeah. On that note, we're coming to the top of the hour here. Anything that you would like to plug?
No, I mean, look, if you're listening to this, you probably know the deal. You're probably a Roast Battle super fan. So instead of plugging anything, I would just like to take the time to say thank you. It is legitimately because of the Patreon community and people who are fans on that level that we're able to do what we're trying to do. And I've said from the beginning, that's why I laugh when people, get in the YouTube comments and they're like, this should have so many more views. It's like everybody cares about views and all this. I don't care about any of that. I'm just old school that way. I'd rather have 100 hardcore fans than 1 million people who will click the video and then not ever watch our shit again. Other people can have those numbers and, it looks cool and all that. And our numbers are good. We passed 100,000 subscribers, which is great. But like, ultimately, I would much rather have 100 people who really, really love this shit than 1 million who are just like passing through. So thank you to everybody. If you're listening to this, you're probably one of the people I'm talking about. And we collectively as a community really, really appreciate you guys.
Right on. Thanks for being on today, Pat. It's been a pleasure, man.
Pleasure was all mine, man. Thank you very much.